For reasons that utterly escape everyone involved, you're listening to A Bipolar, a Schizophrenic, and a Podcast. Here are your hosts, Gabe Howard and Michelle Hammer.
Hey everyone, welcome to A Bipolar, a Schizophrenic, and a Podcast. My name is Gabe Howard, and I'm the bipolar one.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hammer, and I'm the schizophrenic one. Who would have thunk it?
I mean, I think they might have realized by process of elimination, and I know how important it is to you that people are able to use process of elimination.
I learned it when I was young, and I just figured it out. Some people don't get it, but I'm really into process of elimination. It's a thing that I do.
That's a really long way to describe mostly nothing. Michelle, our first week of Define Normal sales were pretty kick-ass. We sold a bunch of the shirts. I see you are wearing yours right now. Email us at show@psychcentral.com and tell Michelle what normal means. But we think that it is very normal to support this podcast by going to store.psychcentral.com and ordering a Define Normal shirt. And when you get it, take a selfie in it, send it to us, and we will make you internet famous. Michelle, we wanted to talk about normal today. So we combed the internet, mostly psychcentral.com, and we found this interesting, I don't want to call it an article, but more like a series of definitions called Normal Reactions versus How People with Mental Illness React. Now, we've already got a little bit of a problem there because, how mentally ill people react when they're in crisis, how mentally ill people react when they're like Gabe and Michelle, not as crazy as we were when we were sick, but we've got some stuff to work with, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. A lot of this kind of brings up is that I remember learning in high school, depression means you're sad for 2 or more weeks. Okay, what does that mean? That to me, I didn't understand. 2 or more weeks of sadness means you're depressed? I was sad all the time, but I didn't know I was sad because I didn't know what normal happiness was. So what does 2 weeks of sadness mean? That definition of depression made no sense to me at an age of 15 where I was depressed and I didn't know what non-depression was and what this 2-week time period really meant. Do you time yourself of sadness and go, oh, it's been 2 weeks, I must be depressed? It's a very confusing thing to say.
Well, Michelle, to be a little fair, you've got the definition a little incorrect. It's not being sad or depressed for 2 or more weeks. It's having depression that interferes with the activities of daily living for 2 weeks or more. So, for example, if you're so depressed you can't get out of bed or go to work or go to lacrosse practice or record your podcast, then that's an indicator that it might be depression. So it's not just having something, it has to impact you in some negative way.
You should have told my teacher that because she did not explain that to us. And I loved my teacher, but she kind of left out all that stuff you just said to me. And if that was said to me, I would have understood it a lot more.
Well, what we have learned is that you should listen to Gabe because Gabe
Gabe
is genius.
Gabe is Santa genius.
Santa genius. But we've got a lot of examples here, and we're going to lovingly call this normal reactions versus reactions because of mental illness. Please, 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 please don't send us a bunch of emails saying that, well, when I was in crisis, I wouldn't have done that, or, well, now that I'm well, I have the normal reactions, but I still have mental illness, or everybody does that sometime. We know that there is a whole host and array of human personalities and behaviors, and that everybody reacts to things a little bit differently. So this is just kind of for discussion purposes only to kind of put it in your brain. So Michelle, what should people not do?
Email us about purposes, discussion, brain, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't listening to that whole thing because you were being really specific.
Well, now I have full faith that our listeners understood, considering that my co-host doesn't. So hopefully our listeners are smarter than Michelle Hammer.
I'm a genius. 3.5 GPA in college, okay?
Listen, the only type of genius you are is a very stable genius. Okay, so the very first thing out of the gate is there's an example here career-wise. So a normal person, when they make a mistake at work, what do?
They fix it and they keep going.
Right, because, it's just a little mistake. You figure out the mistake, you correct it, and you move on. But somebody that is suffering from mental illness, what do they do?
Well, in my experience, I would experience extreme anxiety, and that I would think in my head that I never do anything right. I would get really upset about it and then just dwell on it forever, and I would just almost then never get anything done because I would be too afraid that I would make more mistakes. So just being told that I made a mistake would almost make me not be able to work for the rest of the day because I'd be so anxious about making another mistake.
And see, there's an example of the interferes with daily living. Your anxiety is so high, you can't work for the rest of the day because you made a little mistake that, for the purposes of this discussion, we'll say that was just pointed out to you because it needed to be pointed out. Hey, Michelle, you made a mistake. Please fix it. No other consequence. But you made it bigger than it was. Because in this case, of anxiety.
The anxiety of doing things wrong, of making mistakes. Oh no, I made a mistake. What if I make another mistake? What if I make another mistake? I'm going to get fired from this job if I keep making mistakes. What am I going to do? Basically, that would go on in my head.
Now, let's continue this conversation at home. Now we have like our interpersonal relationships, our friends. So if I make plans with you and then I have to cancel the plan. So, hey, Michelle, I know I said we were going to hang out tonight, but now we can't. A normal person would say
that they have a completely legitimate excuse to cancel and there's no big deal.
Right, but what would somebody with mental illness think?
Somebody with a mental illness that has high anxiety might think that they're too anxious to leave the house today and that canceling the plans will make their friend absolutely hate them.
I think we're bouncing back and forth between a couple of things there, but the bottom line is, in our interpersonal relationships, we take little nonsense things like having to cancel plans, remove plans, get together next week, and we make them into huge things. Who's done the thing where they send a text message and they stare at their phone and wonder why the person hasn't answered yet?
Yeah, and sometimes you see the ... like they're typing, but then the ... goes away. Doesn't that give you such anxiety?
Well, that clearly means that they hate you and that they're going to email a friend that they like more, clearly making fun of you behind your back.
I know, because when you cancel a plan, maybe you have friends that are together, maybe they're talking about you canceling the plan and how horrible you are that you didn't show up for the plans. You never know what's going on when you're not there, right?
Exactly. I love the next example on, it moved straight from, of course, work to friendships and now we've got family. And the example that we landed on has to do with, pretty much your mom, Michelle, because how you handle your family is very important. We're all most of us are part of families, dysfunctional or not. And to a normal person, when their mother is frustrated with them, a mentally healthy person will
find out what you need to do to make your mama happy.
Right. But a person with mental illness figures, I can never please her anyways. She hates me anyways. She never wanted to be a mother. She doesn't like me. She loves my brother and sister more. So I am just worthless. And since she can never be happy, I'm going to fill in catastrophic answer here. And it's all over something that, in general, to our mothers was relatively simple. She's unhappy because we didn't put the stuff in the dishwasher. But we've decided that she's unhappy because she hates us.
Yeah, can never please the mother.
Does your mom hate you, Michelle?
I don't think she hates me. I think she doesn't like that I don't clean my room enough.
I mean, you don't even live there. But I've got to tell you, your mother is right. You don't clean your room enough.
Well, then why don't you clean my room?
Why the fuck would I clean your room?
'Cause you should.
I don't even live in New York City. I love that we have moved past family, and now we have, of course, to keep Michelle's streak going, we have a lacrosse.
Managing losing. All right. So this story happened to me. So the normal reaction to be when you lose a game, you lose, you reflect, you do better next time, and you work hard at practice. So say there was this one time this game against a team, I didn't have a very good game, I was very upset, I wasn't really, medicated the right exact way. So we're kind of having food after the game, but we're in the field house. I go downstairs to the training room. I take a surgical blade. I go, I don't know what I'm doing with this. I go outside. I call my best friend who had graduated, told her what I had. I'm making plans. I don't know what to do. I go home. Well, my best friend called my coach, told her the assistant coach. Half an hour later, who's knocking on my door but my coach and my assistant coach going, I said, there's no problem here. They go, yes, there is. And they barged on in and talked to me for about half an hour to an hour about what am I doing? Why do I have this? What's going on? All this whole big thing. You got to come down. Everybody loves you. Annalise thinks you're the person that, keeps her calm on the field. Everybody needs you. The whole deal. And then the next day, I just usually go to my coach's office like I usually do in the morning. And she goes, well, we're going to the health center. And we had a lovely, lovely, lovely meeting with the first therapist I ever talked to at the health center, who I actually hate his guts. And
do you ever have a story that ends positively, Michelle?
Well, I'm just saying that he kept saying that if I didn't tell him, I wouldn't say what I had that was dangerous. And he's like, well, if you don't tell me, I'm going to send you to the hospital. And I said, no, you're not. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't do anything. And he's like, well, what about your treatment plan? Because I had set him a treatment plan from my past attempts or whatever. And I'm like, well, I followed it. And he goes, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. It says call somebody. That's what I did. I called somebody. As soon as I had something dangerous in my hand, I called somebody. I followed my treatment plan. Blah, 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 blah. Moral of the story, I was okay.
There's a moral?
There is no moral, but the end of the story is that I followed the treatment plan and calling my friend like I was supposed to, but I did need help in that situation because this loss was really hard on me, and I blame myself a lot. When you play low defense and everything, you have to just run the defense all the time. It really hurts when you lose, when you blame yourself, even though you shouldn't blame yourself on a full team thing.
That is the most relevant thing that you have just said. You blamed yourself for the team's loss. And also, as I know you know, losing is part of sport. I mean, we all prefer winning, but sometimes you lose.
Yeah, it's just like I would say that, a really bad mental illness reaction would be to take a loss and take it so personally that you are thinking about dying. That's extreme. After that, I just kind of found ways to deal with it better, pretty much.
All I know is that even though I've never played a sport in my life, just hearing your stories about participating in team sports is enough to know that I am not mentally stable enough to handle it. I mean, I already don't want to run back and forth on a field carrying a little stick looking for a tennis ball. But even if I did, just wow, it's going to make me schizophrenic. I'm positive lacrosse is what did it to you. I think you would have been fine if you never would have played sports.
That's not true. Well, I had a concussion in 8th grade because of soccer, but who knows? Shut up, Gabe. We need to hear from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.com. Secure, convenient, and affordable online counseling. All counselors are licensed, accredited professionals. Anything you share is confidential. Schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist whenever you feel it's needed. A month of online therapy often costs less than a single traditional face-to-face session. Go to BetterHelp.com/Psych Central and experience 7 days of free therapy to see if online counseling is right for you. BetterHelp.com/Psych Central.
So now we move right along. So you played lacrosse in college, which is school. So this really applies to anything. I mean, we put it under school just to follow a nice narrative path, but you have a lot of work to do. So a normal person would
get organized, make a schedule, and get it done. But it's college, so maybe you might go drinking in between. But yeah.
No, but seriously, you would, like you said, you'd get organized, you'd make a to-do list, and you'd get it done. You would find a way to complete all of the tasks. What would Michelle do?
Well, the stress of school, when I would have a lot of things to do, I would just take a long nap and just dream about the work getting done in my sleep.
Did it ever work?
Not a once.
What did you do to actually get the work done? Because college was kind of a tumultuous time for you. I mean, you were getting treatment and you were very fortunate to have people in your corner, but I know that you struggled a lot.
I mean, I would just go to the library, just immerse myself in the library, get all my work done then. I would try to schedule things out in between classes, get things done. I was also a graphic design major, so in my art classes, there was no real tests or anything, but I went to a liberal arts school, so I had to take other really hard classes. So I would try to take classes like with my friends, like maybe not at the same time, but the same like semester, so we could study together. And just, also I had friends that had taken classes previous semesters. They would help me out, everything like that. Good thing I was an art major, though. That was very helpful.
So you're saying that the reason that you graduated college is because you drew pretty pictures? I'm just
saying I was an art major, so I didn't have to study for tests in art class.
So you're saying that I could get a college degree right now if I went for art?
You might fail.
I definitely fail. I can't even draw a circle.
There was people that did fail my art classes, mostly because they didn't come to class. Like, how can you be that dumb? You pay for college, and then you don't go to class? Like, you're so stupid.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you just said there, because you acknowledge that normal or mentally healthy people show up in class, and that even though you were sick, you recognized that you needed to go to class, and you in fact went. You just dropped the ball in other areas. So it's certainly possible that the normal reaction can play out in some areas, even though you were clearly showing the signs of schizophrenia.
Oh, yeah, definitely. My whole thing was like, just go to class. The teacher will say you're there. You'll get attendance, and you'll at least get points for being in class. Even if you do bad in the class, you still were there. And you have the attendance, the participation grade.
I love how you've still managed to game the system. Good job. Like, I get participation points because I slept in class, not at home.
Just bring your computer and go on the internet.
And of course, Michelle, now we get to, just the worst case scenario of life. And it's the death of a loved one. It's really the grief process. And it's important to point out that mental illness, it's not just the serious and persistent mental illness of, like Gabe and Michelle, bipolar and schizophrenia, or major depression. Everybody has mental health. And grief is an excellent example of something that will happen to almost everybody on Earth. Because if you live long enough, better than average odds, you're going to outlive somebody that you care about. And grief is one of those things that a lot of people go through and that a lot of people misunderstand, because grief is a mental health challenge. And there is a normal way to handle grief in that there's a process. There's the 7 stages of grief. I mean, you've got your bargaining, and you've got your denial, and you get all the way to acceptance. And we're not going to go through all of them, but then there's the atypical ways to handle grief. The not being able to get out of bed for a month, the losing your job, the thoughts of suicide, slipping into something more serious than grief, like major depression. And this becomes very traumatic for people.
I agree with you. Grief is not easy to deal with. I had an uncle that died at age 52, and he died before all 4 of my grandparents had even died. So I wasn't used to any kind of death in my family, really. So I remember hearing that he died, and it felt like I had been stabbed in the stomach, and the knife was twisted, and it just hurt so much. And I think I grieved for about 2 years until I finally just wouldn't just cry when I thought about him. Like, he still has a Facebook page, and it's like a memorial Facebook page, and it's like devastating to look at. But I found that, like, to not get upset so much, I have to just stop looking at his Facebook page.
So Michelle, when you were 22, you were not quite, I mean, you weren't quite stable yet. You were still reaching for recovery, but you weren't quite there. This was the first death that you went through, and you took it really, really hard, and you handled it more in the mental illness way. Is that a fair statement?
I guess so, because I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. I didn't know how to handle it. I tried to go to work the next day. I kept having to leave and go to the bathroom and just cry and cry and cry. It was devastating.
Now, one of our favorite guests on the show is your grandmother, a woman named Blanche, who passed away when you were 25. And we honor her on the show all the time because you two are very close. Now, she passed away 3 years about after your uncle, but also when you were more mentally stable, when you were able to handle it better. How did your grandmother's death impact you versus how your uncle's death impacted you? And how much of that do you attribute to being more in recovery with schizophrenia?
It impacted me differently because she was more like 85 years old. And she also had lung cancer, and we were all told that the doctor said she had 1 year to live. So we were all prepared for it to happen. She was way older. I mean, everybody knows that, it's the difference between 85 and 52. It's different. I was able to handle it better, and I remember that year that we were told that she was not going to live more than a year. I spent a lot of time with her. I would go to the assisted living. I'd have dinner with her. It was fun. It was fine. We spent a lot of time together. I would call her and everything. But I think I had an easier time with that because I was better taking care of my mental health, and also I was more prepared for what was going to happen. And also I know that she was kind of ready and understood that what was happening with her. My uncle had ALS, which basically just took away all of his voluntary movements, but his brain was there, so he was trapped in his own body. When she, her mind was there, and she just was in a wheelchair, but, she was there, she could speak and everything, and my uncle couldn't even talk. So it was just completely different illnesses, but...
You were much more prepared for it.
I was prepared for it, but actually, for a few months after she died, I would get these weird, kind of weird vibes that she was in the room. That would probably be my schizophrenia, but I had vibes she was in the room.
This is what's messed up. Remember you told the story about being at the wall in Jerusalem?
Yes.
And you said that you had, I think that is complete bullshit. I don't think God talked to you at the wall. But when you said for the first few months I felt like my grandma was there, I was like, damn right, Blanche was sneaking up on you. You know she tricky.
I
can't keep my crazy in check.
Every time I go to a register and something's on sale that I didn't know was on sale, I go, Blanche did it. Blanche got me a sale. Value City, her favorite store.
Listen, I love Blanche, and I never met her. What's the takeaway of all of this? I mean, there's a lot to glean from this idea of normalcy. I mean, the first thing is there just is no definition of normal. For me, being a 6'3" redhead who talks to everybody and wants a lot of hugs is very normal. But to a lot of people, that's just craziness. Why are you hugging strangers? That's so weird. But it's normal to me. But I do think that it's important to understand that, sometimes being, quote, abnormal could be a symptom of your mental illness and is worth discussing with a therapist or getting treatment for. I mean, how do we wrap this up, Michelle? What do we tell people? Just if you're doing stuff that you think is weird, you're mentally ill? That can't be the message.
I would always think to try to reevaluate how you handle a situation and kind of think, am I acting this way because I'm anxious, or am I acting this way because I understand the situation? How am I reacting? Crazy or normal? Anxious or calm? Think about it. Rethink your situations. If you make a mistake at work, what kind of reaction should you have? Think about it that way. And understand if you're making a big deal out of something that it shouldn't be, or if you're handling it well. You kind of get what I'm saying, Gabe?
I get it. I think that if your reaction is causing you more negative than positive, it's really time to reevaluate your actions. And if you're not able to change your actions on your own, it's definitely a good time to get help changing your actions, whether that be through therapy, coping skills, peer support, or medication. If you cannot control the way that you react to something and that reaction is causing you harm, it's a good idea for your own happiness to get some help.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks everybody for listening. There are literally millions of podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to ours. Please look in the show notes over at psychcentral.com/BSP if you want to know any more. You can always email us at show@psychcentral.com. And of course, wherever you got this podcast, leave us a written review. Tell us awesome stuff about it and share it all over social media. Finally, you can get your very own shirt and support the podcast over at store.psychcentral.com. We will see you next time.
Define normal!
You've been listening to A Bipolar, a Schizophrenic, and a Podcast. If you loved this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Head over to iTunes or your preferred podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. To work with Gabe, go to gabehoward.com. To work with Michelle, go to schizophrenic.nyc. For free mental health resources and online support groups, head over to psychcentral.com. The show's official website is psychcentral.com/BSP. You can email us at show@psychcentral.com. Thank you for listening, and share widely.